Have you ever been in a meeting with a brilliant idea, but you just hesitated to speak up? Or maybe you felt that wave of panic during a job interview? Well, today, we're going to break down some super practical habits that can turn that hesitation into real, solid confidence. Let's dive in.
This quote absolutely nails it, doesn't it? Your resume, the thing filled with all your hard skills, that might get your foot in the door. But it's your ability to communicate, to connect, your soft skills, that's what's going to land you the job and, honestly, help you build a great career.
And this is what we call the confidence gap. It's that super frustrating space between knowing your stuff and being able to express it well. It's where that anxiety creeps in, and you end up missing out on opportunities, all because your delivery didn't quite match your expertise. I love this slide because it makes such a powerful point. We live in a world that's just overflowing with information, right? Endless stories, or katha. We all pretty much have access to the same facts. So what makes someone actually lean in and listen? It's the kathakar, the storyteller. It's your delivery that makes all the difference.
So, how do we become a better storyteller? Well, the very first habit is the foundation for everything else: preparing your points. Now, this is not about memorizing a rigid script, not at all. It's about having a few core stories and points ready to go, which, let me tell you, cuts down on anxiety like you wouldn't believe. You might think that the most natural-sounding speakers are just winging it, but that's usually not the case. The best communicators are actually the most prepared. They have their go-to anecdotes and key examples polished and ready. This isn't cheating. It's a strategy, and it's a skill that literally anyone can develop.
Okay, let's get really practical here. Think about that dreaded interview question. So, tell me about yourself. Using this framework, you can build a killer answer. First, familiarity. That means you've actually done your homework on the company. Second, focus. You only highlight the skills that are most relevant to the job. And finally, fit. This is where you connect your skills directly to what that company cares about.
All right, so we've got our points prepared, but knowing what to say, that's really only half the battle. Now we've got to master how we say it. And that brings us to our next big habit: mastering your voice and learning how to turn it into a real tool of influence.
The key technique here is something called dynamic speaking, and it's a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. Just by changing the pitch of your voice at the end of a sentence, you can completely change its meaning and how confident you sound. Think about the difference between making a statement and asking a question. This slide shows it perfectly. When you want to make a statement, something you're sure about, you end with a lower pitch. It just sounds certain. Like, soft skills are crucial. See how my voice drops? But when you want to ask a question or invite someone into a conversation, you end with a higher pitch. It signals curiosity. Soft skills are crucial. See the difference? Just listen to how this question sounds. How do you forgive people? That rising tone at the end, it does more than just ask for information. It invites a real connection. It shows you're genuinely curious, and that makes the other person feel heard and excited to share their thoughts. Okay, so let's take these tools and apply them to our one-on-one conversations. A really great way to build a connection is to steer the conversation toward things you're both interested in. It just creates a much more genuine and memorable exchange. When you talk about something you enjoy, try not to just say, "Yeah, I liked it." Dig a little deeper. The source material uses the Mahabharata as an example. So instead of just saying you like it, you could explain why. Maybe it's the moral complexity, the idea that there are no clear heroes and villains. When you show your thought process, you're really showing a piece of who you are, and that's what truly connects with people. But here is a huge trap that so many of us fall into. We think that using big, complex words makes us sound smart. But what it really does is create confusion, and it disconnects us from our audience. True understanding, true intelligence is all about clarity. Okay, for example, listen to this textbook definition of a machine. I mean, it's technically correct, sure, but it's so dense and full of jargon, it's basically impossible to understand the first time you hear it. It just puts up a wall. Now listen to this instead. Simple, clear, unforgettable. That's the goal. Remember, great communication isn't about impressing people with how many big words you know. It's about connecting with them by making sure they understand you. So, clarity is king in a one-on-one chat. But what happens when you're in a group? How do you apply these ideas then? Let's talk about how to hold the floor and add to the conversation without feeling like you're yelling over everyone or just getting lost in the noise.
One of the most powerful and yet simplest techniques is what's called inclusive eye contact. As you're talking, don't just stare at one person. Make a point to briefly look at each person in the group. It's a tiny action, but it sends a huge message. You're part of this. I see you. It keeps the whole group engaged and listening to you. And hey, if you're a bit on the quieter side and you're wondering, how do I even jump in? The yes and technique is your absolute best friend. Seriously, it takes all the pressure off. You don't have to come up with some groundbreaking new idea. Just listen, find something you agree with, and then build on it. Yes, I totally agree with that point, and it makes me think of it's such a natural and collaborative way to join the conversation. So, as we start to wrap this up, if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. Confidence is not some magical trait you're born with. It's a skill. And it's a skill that's built by practicing these very deliberate habits, preparing your points, mastering your voice, and connecting with people thoughtfully. So, you've taken a huge step toward becoming a more confident speaker. But we all know that great communication is a two-way street, right? Which brings us to the final question to leave you with. Now that you know how to speak well, what about the other side of the coin? The crucial art of truly listening.